Yeah, I have slides. In my culture, we always have slides. I'm on a stage and I have a microphone. I don't know, am I Celine Dion? I don't know. This is very different. Most of the time when I talk about my research, it's at a scientific conference. It's a little different culture. And so what I'm going to talk to you today about is my passion, which is natural resources in the Anthropocene. And so when I was invited here to talk about sustainability, I was like, well, that's interesting because I'm not sure that I believe in sustainability. Just because, not that I don't want to have a good environment for people going forward into the future, but sustain sort of implies that things are going to be similar. And most of my research suggests that's not true. So maybe adaptability would be the title that I would be more comfortable with. But I do like trees. My bio there was maybe a little more for a scientific audience, but I just love being outside. I love being in nature. So that's how I got started in this whole thing. I just wanted a job where I could be in a forest with my dog and no other people. And so that's what I did in grad school. So I studied hemlock woolly adelgid, which is an insect that's removing eastern hemlock, a tree that occurs from Alabama in the mountains up north, and it's been there since the last glacial maximum, which was 10,000 years ago. And somebody decided that they wanted a Japanese tree in their yard. And accidentally, they brought a bug over. And now the entire eastern forest is reshaped. So I was always kind of interested in the decisions we make and how they affect the environment. So when we talk about the Anthropocene, it's really geologists that get to decide how to divide up history. And they're still debating whether they believe the Anthropocene is a thing. But I think it's a useful concept. It just means it's the period in history where humans are the major driver of the Earth system. And when we investigate whether that is a useful concept, we think about this graph. How many people see this graph in their sleep? So in science, I think we're just so motivated, and we think maybe if we show you our best graphs, then you'll listen to us more. So this is one of our best graphs. And so this is called the Keeling Curve. It's named for a scientist who set up a monitoring station on a mountain in Hawaii. It's the Mauna Loa Observatory to measure the atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide. And he set it up in 1958. And this was the level of carbon dioxide that this sensor measured in Hawaii on an island on the top of a mountain away from any sort of industrial influence. And since that time, we've arrived at this level. So this is the last reading when I was preparing the slides. So it's 402 parts per million carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And as you can see, that's quite a bit more than when this sensor was set up. But if we want to get really technical, we can use ice cores and isotopes of carbon and oxygen to try to determine how much concentration the atmosphere had going back 800,000 years. And this is where we are. So this is the record from ice cores going back 800,000 years. And this is where we are today. And that's why I question sustainability, and I suggest maybe adaptability would be something we might want to consider. Because we're in uncharted territory. It's intimidating, but it's also motivational. So what are we going to do? This is the reality that we have. So what are we going to do going forward to ensure that humanity has a high quality of life? And so the questions that motivate my research particularly are whether high quality fresh water will be in the right place at the right time is increasingly uncertain. And water is one of those things that is essential. And it's something that is questionable even in North Carolina. So you may think of the Southwest. I don't know, I wouldn't move there. But in the Southeast, we have a chance, but we can't let it pass. So this is the US Drought Monitor for November 8th. And so the increasingly deep colors of red suggest there's more intense drought. And so you can see our state is involved in some of this. And as a result, it's on fire. This is the smoke from the fires in western North Carolina, and there's one in northern Georgia, in the past week. All right. And so I could go on all night. But this is the situation in the western part of the state. And we know in the eastern part of the state, we kind of have the opposite problem. So this is about a month ago in Lumberton. This is Interstate 95 underwater. And so we have a problem with too much water. We don't have enough water in the western part of the state, and we have too much water in the eastern part of the state. And this is sort of illustrative of what we think the future will hold. So global climate models are pretty accurate at measuring the change in average global temperature, because that's a global phenomenon, and we're talking about average temperature. And it happens at such a large scale. What's difficult is measuring precipitation, because there's so many local processes that go into that we're not very certain of what will happen. But what we do have high confidence is that we'll have more extremes. So we're facing a future of more droughts and more floods. So we need to prepare for both, even in the same state at the same time, which is challenging. So most of my research is how forest management might mitigate some of those effects. This is my only very technical slide. Usually they're all very technical. But I study the impacts of not only climate change, but land use change. As we have more people moving in and they need ecosystem services, things like clean water, clean air, from forests that are shrinking, what are we going to do? This is the watershed that provides drinking water for Greensboro. This is the Piedmont Triad International Airport. And this is current. So the green is forest, the yellow is agriculture, and the increasingly deep colors of red are development. This is what we think it'll look like in 50 years. And so you can see that it's a lot more red. And so we did an experiment. Most of my research is experiments and simulation models. So projections of the future. So it's similar to a computer program that just takes information like how many leaves do we think are there? How much photosynthesis occurs over each area of leaf? And so how much water are the trees using? How much impervious surface is there? So when a raindrop falls, will it run right off of the surface or will it penetrate the soil? That's all included in the simulation model. And we test whether managing the forest might improve things. So this is under normal conditions, the black bars. The orange is under an experimental drought, and the gold is an experimental drought plus forest management. So we're seeing some options as long as we keep forest on the landscape. They may provide a source of flexibility to adjust to the future. And I'm already over time, so that's what I have to share with you today.